Hello and welcome to Politics here on France 24. The table is nearly set for next year's presidential election. We have a socialist candidate, we have candidates from smaller party. We're just waiting for Nicolas Sarkozy, the president, to throw his hat into the ring. This should happen. Well, nobody knows exactly when, but it will certainly happen. So with me to discuss how the presidential race is shaping up is Tracy McNichol, who is the Paris correspondent for Newsweek and the Daily Beast. Hello and welcome.
Thanks.
And also on the set, Gregory Viscusi, who is with Bloomberg News. So last Sunday, some 2.8 million voters decided who would be the socialist candidate, and they chose François Hollande with over 56% of the votes, a clear victory that propels him towards the presidential election in 6 months, and also towards a presidential face-off with incumbent conservative president Nicolas Sarkozy, two very different kinds of politicians.
Hollande and Nicolas Sarkozy were already political opponents, debating and trying to assert their views, leading to heated discussions at times.
Not to be mean, but you're talking nonsense.
So easy to use such words.
Well, sorry if I offended you.
Hollande, Sarkozy, two men who embarked early in their life on a political career, a strong passion for decision-making and for football. Despite being rivals, they have a similar cultural background.
They're of a generation that was brought up in the age of media and television. It structures their lives.
And sometimes controlling one's image is essential. Hollande was heavily criticized by the left for posing, along with Sarkozy, when supporting the new European constitution. But recently, he's been attacking Sarkozy more vigorously than ever before.
He presides on everything, talks all the time about anything, anywhere.
Il parle surtout et il parle
And he talks alone.
et il parle tout seul. C'est un mauvais président.
It's clear now that he's a bad president, but he's not a bad candidate.
Meanwhile, Sarkozy went as far as to say that Hollande had never suggested or achieved anything in politics. Possibly the French president is in disagreement on that point with his predecessor Jacques Chirac, who enjoys a close relationship with the socialist candidate.
I can say I will vote for Hollande.
For Hollande, the key to victory will be to win over the right-wing voters disappointed with Sarkozy without antagonizing those on the left wing who see him as too centrist.
Tracy McNichol, François Hollande has been chosen. He's well known here in France because he was at the helm of the Socialist Party for 11 years, but he's not well known abroad. How would you describe him?
I think he's probably actually a good match for Sarkozy because he's such a sort of a political animal who likes sort of that scrapping and all the sort of the coulisses and the sort of back rooms of politics. And I think he's they will be. I mean, we'll talk about it maybe, but they'll be able to get him on his 11 years as head of the Socialist Party, as sort of not having picked a line, is sort of trying to make everyone happy, which is something that Sarkozy does himself. So it's going to be. I think it'll be a really interesting matchup between these two guys.
Do you agree? The UMP, the ruling conservative, has already attacked Hollande as being soft, undecisive, elusive. Do you think this will work?
I think that will work, and I mean, I think that Hollande is someone who likes politics, but he doesn't. He certainly likes the political game, but he doesn't always come across maybe as pugnacious and combative enough, particularly with someone like Sarkozy, who really enjoys a good scrap. And I think they're certainly going to hit him on his lack of experience, which is true. I mean, he's been head of a department in France, a tiny department in France, or quite a rural
Corrèze.
Yeah, I mean, a rather rural, isolated one at that. He's never really had a government job. He was an advisor to Mitterrand. That's it. So I think they're really going to hammer away at that. On the other hand, there's such an anti-incumbent feeling in all Western democracies right now, including France, that probably is not the handicap that it would have been before the financial crisis. But I think that's really where they're going to try to get him.
Right, but nevertheless, he succeeded in this primary. He got a clear win that he was the favorite, and he delivered. And so does that change him, at least the perception of him, as a kind of old-style politician who was doing backroom maneuvers within the Socialist Party, and now he can present himself as a real alternative to Nicolas Sarkozy?
I think the climate now, as Greg was saying, the climate sort of makes it that people will be okay overlooking things as far as government experience goes. Because if Martine Aubry, his opponent in the primary, had made it into the race, she has plenty of experience, but they would have gotten her on specifics like the 35-hour work week, which they probably also would have gotten Strauss-Kahn on, because he's actually supposed to have been.
He's got no paper trail.
Right. That's something I think people, Socialist Party members, and people who are really, have followed the party very closely, know what his record is within the party, and there might be issues with that. But I think Sarkozy has a record to go on that isn't necessarily glowing, and it might benefit him to have sort of had a step back, and even to have taken time away from the party for 3 years away from the party to sort of give himself a new image and get away from the idea that he was the guy who synthesized, as they say in French, different ideas, and that he had time to come up with his own ideas and sort of step away from the party.
I mean, the storytelling, as we say, that it's been that François Hollande took a step back, found himself, lost weight, and has become a different person. But does that make him presidential material?
It's still hard to say what the man believes in. It's very, that's true with all politicians, but particularly with him, it's really hard to say sort of what is his view, except it's slightly sort of moderate socialism is all you can, a very sort of moderate center left. So I can say, but it's very hard on specific issues to pick what the man believes in, probably because he's left no paper trail, because he's never been in office. But what I think it's interesting in all this is that there's clearly such a desire of a large chunk of people on the French left to vote out Sarkozy. I mean, that really is their number one.
Is this his main asset? That's
his main asset. Is it that the front runner before was Dominique Strauss-Kahn? Now they've chosen Hollande. Both candidates who are much more conservative, it seems, than your average French socialist, and yet the Socialist Party, socialist electors who may have, in their hearts preferred a more leftist candidate, took a very tactical decision that these are the guys who are electable, these are the guys who can win over the center, these are the guys that can beat Sarkozy, and they win for him. And I think there's such a desire to vote out Sarkozy on the far left that and for a lot of centrist voters, that probably a lot of Hollande's faults will be overlooked.
Right. Do you think, as is often said, the election is won at the center, and that therefore François Hollande is more dangerous for Nicolas Sarkozy than someone like Martine Aubry, who is, whether it's right or not, more identified with the left?
I think it depends what round we're talking about, because there's the danger for Hollande is that he seems a little bit too centrist, too social democrat, and the French do what they do in the first round usually, and they vote with their hearts. And someone like Jean-Luc Mélenchon,
who's more on the left,
has appeals to people enough in the first round that he and maybe the Europe Écologie, Les Verts might also. The danger is the 2002 scenario where you split the left vote too much in the first round, and then you don't even get to the second round to have a chance. But I think if he does manage to get into the second round, no one wants to be blamed for having the right get into the Élysée for a fourth time in a row. So once he gets there, I think it will be easier for him to get everyone on side, because nobody wants to take that.
Right. I mean, we can see figures from a poll that was taken this week from the first round and the second round of the presidential election, which put François Hollande with 35% ahead of Nicolas Sarkozy, 25, Marine Le Pen 16. Means Hollande, Sarkozy are in the second round. And in the second round, François Hollande would get 62 versus 38, a huge difference. It's only a snapshot. We're 6 months away, but nevertheless.
I think Hollande's a shoo-in in the first round. I mean, there was what happened in 2002 when Marine Le Pen pipped Jospin, but I think, one, the left learned its lesson from that. Two, there's not really that many likable candidates to his left. I mean, even the ecology party is having its own sort of charisma problems with finding a leader. Edouard Joly, yeah, she's talk about doctrinaire, and Mélenchon is not a particularly appealing person to a lot of French. I think in 2002 there was a much better assortment of people on the far left to chip away Jospin than there is this time, which leaves that if there is going to be a 2002 scenario this time, it's more Sarkozy that risks being pipped out by Marine Le Pen, who's picked up a lot of leftist votes because she's now suddenly gone for this. Instead of being more of an anti-immigrant campaign, it's really more about anti-globalization, anti-capitalism. So she's actually picked up a lot of working class votes that might have gone to the left in the past. So I think the risk is more on Sarkozy's right than it is on Hollande's left.
Right. Do you think this means Nicolas Sarkozy will be torn in terms of his positioning in the campaign between moving towards the far right to secure those votes and going towards the center, where he will need to get voters for the second round? It'll be a difficult.
Well, that's what's so interesting about the positioning of the UMP right now, because they're sort of trying to, it's pretty bold to say, François Hollande, he's sort of a flip-flopper, he's soft, he plays to the radicals, when that's sort of what Sarkozy's been doing very much in the public eye for 5 years. I mean, ouverture at the beginning with letting in the sort of leftists into government, and then fermeture? I mean, it was all, at the moment it's all, the radical right-wingers in his party that are I saw gave an interview to a far-right publication yesterday, I think he will be tempted to do that, but it'll be difficult because if it's playing through the center, he's really going to have to watch himself on that.
We've seen the ruling party fire at François Hollande on his personality, but also on the spendthrift tradition of the Socialist Party, saying, be worried, French people, because they are going to do like when François Mitterrand, the last socialist president to be elected, did when he arrived in 1981, spent a lot and had to turn around 2 years later. And so do you think this is going to be the argument?
That will be an argument, and it's actually a fairly convincing argument. If you look at if you listen to the socialist debates, but both Hollande and Aubry were both talking about the importance of getting France's deficit under control. And then every announcement they made was about, we're going to solve this by hiring more more government workers here. We're going to spend more on this. We're going to spend more on that. I didn't hear a single mention of any spending cut in their debate, and some vague ideas about raising taxes, closing tax loopholes. So I think they will. I think Sarkozy's campaign will definitely try to go for the sense that the socialists are not the ones who can control France's budget deficit. However, there's a good chance that France could be downgraded by one of the rating agencies in the next few months, and then Sarkozy's going to be the president who was downgraded. So it's going to be a little tricky for him to say. I think the downgrading could be very, 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 very crucial in this election, because the one argument that Sarkozy can make about the success, or that they'll try to make about his presidency being a success, about the only thing they really can point to, is on the international stage, that he's kind of, he's protected France's good reputation and honor on the national stage on military things like Libya and sort of the importance of France at the UN and things like that, and then also on the economic stage, that the crisis didn't hit France as much as it hit other European countries. Well, if France gets downgraded, and that argument goes out the window.
Do you agree that for François Hollande it's really crucial that he gets a credibility on, especially on the economy, that he can establish himself as someone who, if he wins, can just jump on the ship and steer the wheel?
Sure, and I think Sarkozy's record might do him a disservice there, because again he's sort of done everything in its opposite, and so he'll be able to put certain things forward, and Hollande, who is a sort of a student of these things, and he will have followed carefully what Sarkozy was doing, will be able to say, but you did this, you did this other thing. I mean, Sarkozy has also done spending when it was convenient. So I remember the example of the ads on public television, where he sort of seemed to do this without consulting anyone in 2008, and he just he decided, no more ads on public television in the evening, but it was like hundreds of millions of euros out the window all of a sudden to make a point. I think there are certain things in his record that people can point to and say, hold on, you're a big spender, when he'll try to say the opposite. So he's done a lot in 5 years. Maybe as much as someone would have done in many more years, but it also leaves him an open target for
Well, he's certainly going to
opponents.
open target on the budget deficit issue because of what will be portrayed as tax gifts to the rich. They cut the wealth tax. They've done a fair number of tax reductions, most of them that benefited high income earners. Now that's been slightly rolled back in the most recent corrective budget, where they have restored some of those taxes on higher earnings. But overall, if you're a higher earner, you're better off in France now than when Sarkozy took over. And that's something that Hollande is certainly going to attack him on. That in the midst of in the midst of all this budget crisis stuff, you gave away money to the rich.
But do you agree with Greg that the crisis is maybe going to be the referee of the coming election? That the candidates will take some positions, but whatever happens will be decided by Moody's or by the markets.
Well, yeah. I mean, it depends how it's spun. It depends who is best at spinning it. It's funny because it's sort of the crisis here is sort of like Sarkozy's Chirac in 2007. I mean, if Sarkozy was coming in after he'd been there for a long time, and he could take credit for the things he wanted to take credit for, but he could also say, but Chirac thought of this other thing that wasn't popular, and he was able to sort of deflect certain things by blaming this figure who had been there for a long time. And now he's been in power for a long time, but he could say, well, sure, but there's this biggest crisis in recent memory, so he can deflect in that way, because it's disingenuous for the Socialist Party to blame him for everything. I mean, in the global climate at the moment.
Right. But so, just a last word. You think he still stands a chance, Nicolas Sarkozy?
Oh, I think he definitely stands a chance. I think these polls, he's very unpopular. No question, he's very unpopular. But I think to a lot of French people, he probably does appear more presidential than Hollande will. Hollande will get attacked for his lack of record and things like that. No, I think Hollande's advantage will chip away as we approach the election. I wouldn't bet at this point, but it's certainly not going to be decided in that sort of 62 to 38 range that the polls are now showing.
Well, there's a 20%. 20% didn't answer in that poll, or 18%. So
as usual in a French election, whoever wins, it's going to be 52-48.
Okay. Well, we'll have to see if that comes true. If Nicolas Sarkozy can inch back and challenge François Hollande, who is now the favorite. Thank you very much to both of you, and thank you for watching Politics here on France 24.